ahead, team.
Just as a heads up, I'm about to type this. We are going to have our school's having a lockdown drill any minute. So I'll be talking, or one of us might be talking, and you might hear an alarm going off. We're okay. We're not going anywhere. But just know that's what you might hear. That's the life of working at a school, right? Let me go ahead and get our presentation going as well. Thank you again for coming. Appreciate it. We're going to talk a little bit today about our school and sort of how we work together. So we'll each introduce ourselves a little more detail. We're going to talk about how we make our teams. So you can see how that works. It's a little different than other places. A little bit about how we make those teams work with each other in a more deeper, more personalized way. And then from there, sort of how do we sort of build leadership at our school and create a culture that is supportive of all people who are working here at every level. So we'll talk a little bit about what that means as far as our future. So we'll start by just introducing ourselves a little bit better. This is our last actual activity before our school went into shutdown in March 2020, and our trip to we took a bus full of ninth graders to UC Davis, and you can see I'm in there threatening one of my former students. She's laughing because it's fun, but I'm not actually threatening her. And you see Miss Placencia and her sister. These are all of all the students in this picture are alumni who actually led our tour for us at UC Davis. So again, my name is Jeff Austin. I'm the principal, currently the principal here. I was assistant principal before that, a targeted student population coordinator before that. And I started here by helping create the school, and I was a government and economic teacher. And I think that path from teacher to principal is kind of important to what we're doing. And then I'll go ahead and I'll pass it over to Eugenia.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Eugenia Placencia, and so it's my 4th year here as a math teacher, and I think our drill is starting, but
emergency situation and need to implement lockdown procedures.
I'm just gonna keep going. So my name is Eugenia Placencia. It's my 4th year here as a 9th grade math teacher. And how I heard about Humanitas is because my sister, who you see sitting next to me, was a student here, and she graduated in 2016, and I was already a teacher at a different school. I'm just gonna pause real quick. Sorry, y'all. All right, I think we're good. Thank you. I appreciate that, Joanne. But I was at a different school, and I saw just the growth that she had made from middle school to high school, not just as a student, but as a person. And I was like, this is the type of school I want to be at someday. And 4 years ago, I was able to make that transition, and it's been amazing ever since. And I don't think I ever want to leave the school. And I'm gonna pass it over to Vega.
Hello, good morning. Robert Vega. I'm the assistant principal. This is my 10th year at Social Justice Humanitas. I started here as the world history teacher, and then I transitioned to TSP, Targeted Student Population Coordinator, for 3 years. And then this is my first year as assistant principal. I had already taught for 6 years at 2 other schools in Los Angeles before coming here. And I was very comfortable. I was moving right along. I felt I was growing as an educator at a good pace at my other schools. Then I got here, and the systems that were already in place, my values aligned very well with the values of the school, and working with the people that were here. My growth as through my curriculum as an educator exponentially, and even as a person, really, I had just a lot of personal growth here. I love being here. I never would have imagined leaving teaching to become not even a coordinator or an administrator, but I wouldn't have done it anywhere but here. So yeah, I love this place, and yeah, thank you very much for being here.
Cool. So we'll kind of get into it here. I want to give you a little bit of the context of our school. This is a picture of what is actually the Cesar E. Chavez Learning Academies campus. And that little orange building is our school. So there are 4 schools on one campus. Students don't share teachers, so they stay. Our students have all their classes with us in our building. And this is part of a plan. We literally, in 2010, a team of teachers at another school nearby that I was part of wrote a plan, and we're in a competition with charter organizations, district groups, to see who got control of these 4 buildings. And so the three of the 4 schools were handed over to teams of teachers to run. And so our first principal, I think, is the only principal who was ever a principal without a credential. He didn't have his credential for the first week and a half. But these are all different thematic schools. We're obviously have a social justice theme, but there's also an art theater magnet, a science school, and a technology focused school. So that's kind of where we're at, but we do share facilities. We all play as the Chavez Eagles in sports, and we have, shared athletics and that kind of thing. And then next to us, you see over on the left is the famous San Fernando swap meet. So we're in an interesting little industrial location. The 2 pictures you'll see are from our community. The Pacoima Mural Mile is pretty well known in LA with lots of these cool murals around. Our school is smaller. We have usually right now we're at our lowest ever. A lot of it pandemic based. Right now we're about 480, but we're usually around 520 to 540 students. I have 24 teachers, 2 counselors, which will in the next few weeks will become 3. We're hiring a 3rd counselor. Myself and Mr. Vega are the only administrators, and I have a coordinator who works with our EL and Title I work, and then 3 office staff, 2 sped aides. We have a community rep that's going to be joining us soon. As a former, her students went here. 3 of her kids went to school here, and she's great. She's gonna be the mom to a lot of kids, and we're also hiring a bunch of alumni to be tutors and in classroom support. We're it's called a pilot school in Los Angeles. It means we have some autonomy. We have some freedoms to do some specific things, especially around budget, staffing. People say we look like a charter, but we are a LAUSD school, one of 181 high schools in Los Angeles Unified, and that has 600,000 students, the 2nd largest in the country. Our teachers are all members of the United Teachers Los Angeles, the teachers union, but they do have a little addendum to their contract that's called our elect to work agreement, which they actually help write. So it makes us a little bit different, but it also gives us the ability. What we'll talk about is how to define what our values are, what our expectations are, to help specifically serve those 500 kids who are in our building, and not necessarily tailored to the other 600,000 kids in LA. We also have a lot of support. We work with a lot of community partners to provide everything from social, emotional support to mental health care to curriculum support. And also we've been the subject of a good amount of research from groups like Learning Policy Institute. Our school is primarily Latino students, 97.8%, I believe. Almost all of our students qualify for free reduced lunch. Every student on campus can get free breakfast, free lunch, and free supper. Most of our students, English is their 2nd language. Spanish primarily the other one. We do have one student whose primary language is French, and she's Haitian. She has a great Etsy shop I can share with you. We have about 29% of our parents graduated high school and the rest didn't. Of course, many coming from different parts of the country. So education has been a challenge in this community for a while. And we're also, of course, relying on a lot of people. That doesn't mean it's not a value, it just means it's been a challenge. But this year, again, I think it's about the 3rd or 4th consecutive year, every single one of our seniors who's eligible for admission to the University of California or California State University system have applied, and the vast majority of those also get in. We also, for the last few years, have had 100% completion of FAFSA, so that students get their financial aid to get into and pay for school. And that we have always found has been a huge, huge barrier. So we're really, really proud of those data pieces. 100% graduation last year, even in a pandemic. We're always above 90% graduation rates. So a lot of stuff to be proud of. I think we've done a great job. And a lot of it has to do with how we work and our teachers and just our team. And so we're going to get a little bit into this technical piece of how it's set up. And I'm going to go ahead and let Vega take over on ILT.
All right, thank you. Yeah, ILT stands for the Instructional Leadership Team. Other than the Governing Council, which is our, part of, think of it like your school site council. The ILT is comprised of the leadership, the grade level leads, the department leads, and the administration. Those are the members, those are the voting members. We're required to attend every other week when we have meetings, but our meetings are open to any staff member to attend and participate, to share ideas, comment on whatever the topic is. We share the agenda with the whole staff before the meeting, just to let everybody know what we're going to discuss. It's really, every school has an instructional leadership team. Like I said, I've been at 2 other schools before being here. They all had some team that might have had a different name, kind of like the brain trust that kind of plans all the stuff out. Really, the focus for us is on planning, but planning using our core values as a compass, as a guide, as what kind of drives us. Basically making sure that we do doing what's best for kids, for our kids, really. We look for innovation, but that comes through the inclusion of ideas. And so we really want everybody that's there to participate through their ideas. We really don't want buy-in. We don't want someone that's going to be on ILT just because we needed the spot to be there and kind of showing up because, hey, we're checking a box. We really, when we're meeting, we really look to get everybody's idea on the table to make sure that everyone has a voice. And usually when we do that, we really are looking for people to take ownership of whatever we're planning, ownership of the work.
For your participation in our emergency lockdown drill, it is all clear.
Thanks. I'm sure you're all reassured that we're all clear over here. Yeah, but really we want ownership of whatever we're planning, ownership of the work that's got to get done. The ILT doesn't really, for example, right now we're looking at standards-based grading. We're looking at the implementation of it. It's the topic that's kind of coming up at all of our meetings. The ILT doesn't necessarily say, hey, everybody bring in plans and let's evaluate. That's more for the GLTs. The ILT might take a look at some of the data though, right? Well, the GLT is already kind of implemented. We met, we did a success analysis protocol. This is kind of some of the information we're getting back. And then the ILT looks at it. So the ILT is really kind of like big planning, taking a look at data. What can we do about it? And because we got such a cross section of leadership on there, we say, everyone's kind of chiming in, and it really becomes more about plans and dissemination. But the real work kind of happens in the GLTs, and I'll go ahead and let Eugenia talk about that.
Thanks, Vega. Yeah, so the ILT is kind of like the big, not big, but one of the systems that trickles down to the GLT. So as Vega said, each grade level team elects a representative. Either it's the GLT lead or just the representative that was elected by the team to attend ILT. And typically things that were discussed at ILT that we feel, so the agenda is open to everybody. Everybody can access it and read it. But if we feel there's any specific agenda items that we need to address with our GLTs, we will do that. And it's really teacher-led. So we, in our independent teams, elect a leader or decide that we're going to do a distributed leadership model, which my team, the 9th grade, GLT is testing out this year and it's going really, really well. We had noticed that our dynamic the 2 years prior was that whoever was the GLT lead just kind of took on a lot of, or it was assumed that they were just going to do most of the communication. And it was just a lot to put on one person. So we decided, let's just all be leads and take turns facilitating the meetings and coming up with the agenda items, deciding on protocols, things like that. And it really breeds a sense of agency and autonomy for teachers. At my old school, I was GLT lead my last year. And what I noticed was, I would put together an agenda and it would just be taken over by venting about students, venting about administration. And then I try to bring things up to administration and I realized I had no agency. My role was really just this facade of leadership, like you're a GLT lead, but I would go and they'd be like, oh, we can't do that. So it really felt like I was being stifled. And when I got here and saw how the GLTs ran and made decisions that were responsive to the needs of their students and what was happening in their classrooms, and admin was just backing us up. They're like, that sounds like a great idea. Go ahead, try it out, test it out. It was just, I felt way more engaged. And I felt like I wanted to bring ideas to the table, create my own initiatives. And it was just, it really breeds the sense of agency and autonomy, which we're going to get to is how we build capacity at our school within our staff. And minimal admin is not really like, it is a pro only because it's not like, oh, well, Jeff and Vega said that we have to do this thing. So how are we going to do this thing? It's, we come up with ideas and then we run them by them. But usually it's, yeah, go ahead. Let us know how we can help, right? Instead of them saying no and shutting us down. So one other facet of the GLT team or the grade level teams is that this is where we primarily do our interdisciplinary curriculum planning, which is a big facet of our school community. And most of the time we have an hour that we meet each week, but the interdisciplinary work sometimes trickles into, an extra session on a weekend or after school so that we can really create things that are adaptive to the needs of our students. And then my next piece is getting into this relationship piece. So how do we build relationships within our staff? Because if we're not getting along, the work's not going to get done. So part of that is at ILT, at GLT meetings, at PD, we always start with check-in. So humanizing is one of our big values here at Humanitas. And even if it takes 10, 15 minutes of an hour meeting, we don't see that as time lost. We see that as time invested in each other and in ourselves, because then we're able to, put the things that were on our mind to the side and just kind of get to the work and be a lot more efficient. This is also true in the classroom with our students. I start off my classes with a check-in, which is not content related. It's just, how was your weekend? Another question, and I have students discuss so that they can start to build relationships with each other and with me. And so they trust me and they trust their classmates. So it's investment, right? Investment in people. We really think of our staff as people first, and then, teachers or admin or staff second. Same thing with our students. They're people first, and then they're students. So whenever issues come up in the classroom, which they do, it's not go outside, I'm going to kick you out of the class, go talk to the principal. We try and handle it almost in-house. So I might ask a student to step out and I check in with them and I'm like, hey, what's going on? I'm not just going to, target them like, why are you talking? And just yell at them, because that doesn't get us anywhere. Students shut down. And often when we ask the question, what's going on? What's keeping you from engaging right now? Something else comes up. Maybe they had a fight with a parent in the morning or the night before. They're going through relationship struggles, things like that, right? And so it really allows us to get past that behavior and really address student needs. And this requires a lot of intentional training, right? It's, for some people, this might come a little naturally, but it requires tough conversations at our grade level teams where we're talking about certain students, and oh, I tried this thing and it was really helpful with them, or they're in my advisory, let me check in with them, or let me call home and see what's going on. It's this collaborative problem solving that we do, in addition to other things like council, which is where we sit and talk about our feelings. And some of our students aren't used to that, but by the end of their time here, they love council. And we also do that as a staff. So that's part of the, this technical side of building relationships.
Right. And so a big part of that too is, I mean, that's how we come up with, like you said, the technical side of it is putting those systems in place. And then there's sort of what's the outcome of that? Like, what is it? How do we build a culture that allows for these things to happen? And the first part of that for me and for Vega is setting this tone of like, we have to trust each other. And I think in Los Angeles specifically, and I've seen that based on conversations with people that I know around the country, that Los Angeles has this tone of teachers versus admin. And it just doesn't exist here for the most part. There have been challenges in that set, but I think when my first year as principal, the teachers went on strike for 7 days, and a lot of admin just were, just kind of like closed up and managed the crisis. And I went out to the strike line and talked to them, because these were my colleagues, and in most cases, a lot of cases, my friends, and I wanted to be out there to support them. So setting that tone of like, this is a team, we work together. And, because we do so much work on sharing the load, we have to trust each other, so that it's not my goal as an administrator to find as many reasons as possible to write up teachers or to get people in trouble. Like, my goal is to build a team, right? And that is all the systems in place, all like the trainings you mentioned. If you're thinking about doing training around how to help your team have conversations, if you've never done cognitive coaching, if you ever look at adaptive schools, we do it like every year almost. And then people are like, we haven't done that in a while, but we did just do it earlier this year. So we repeat that every year. It's how to have those conversations, because we're trying to share that load. And this will be a little bigger topic in the next slide, but it's not like when you come to work here, your first goal is to meet the needs of students. And that's not always how to best share content. It is, we're building capacity across the school to have those conversations with each other. To be honest, like, Henia has no trouble kind of challenging me on things. And it helps me as a leader to not be the only voice in the conversation. And part of that is like building that ability to how to have those conversations, how to take charge of things, from the first year teacher to the 23rd year teacher, continuing to build what we can do as teachers and as leaders. And of course, like Henia said, like practicing the things we teach. So not just making students have counsel, but we have our teacher councils. And they get hella emotional, man. Like it gets deep. And that's when we get into the situations like having to close a school down, 2/3 of the way through the school year, or having to teach online where we don't see each other in person. What got us through that was the relationships we'd built up to that point, because we did practice the things that we taught. And so we were surviving that. So a lot of that is we all have to work together to, in a way that we trust each other, that we all have we've aligned our values, we've aligned our vision, and that's our focus. And so that is a big part of what we do. But so is the building capacity. And so I'll let Vega kind of hit this one up.
So I mentioned that I never saw myself as an administrator. So you're like probably thinking, well, how'd you get here? Yeah, teaching a full load, why would I want to be grade level lead? Because when we're doing councils and I get to know the people that I'm working with closer, I get to know where they come from, what their challenges are, they get to know me. It really does feel like I'm not there as an authority. I'm there to work with that whole steward leadership. And so it's just that culture. It's what we do. It just kind of fosters people to lead. When I was transitioning away from being grade level team lead from the 10th grade, which I was for like 5 years, somebody knew, she was like a third year teacher, said, hey, I'll step up and do it, and since then, the 10th grade has had probably 3 different grade level leads since I transitioned to TSP coordinator. And then so I chose to switch to TSP coordinator, targeted student populations coordinator, because yeah, I was ready for that next step. I was already advisory lead. I had already served in ILT for many years. And I'm like, hey, I want to challenge myself to learn, how can I look at Title I budgets, and how can I look at, English learner program and all these compliance things that the district wants to do. How can I give it a soul? How can I do it, so that how can I add a little bit of Humanitas flavor to it, so that it becomes meaningful? And that was kind of big. Like I said, I never would have imagined doing this, and I don't think I can do this anywhere else. So a lot of our admin, all of our admin actually came from this school. They were all former teachers here. Our first principal, Jeff mentioned, he was a history teacher. Jeff came in as AP history teacher. Our former AP before that was a history teacher here. And then I was also a teacher. And so a lot of our admin comes within, because I think not only do we foster that, we all kind of want that continuity. We know what we have here, and we kind of want to keep it going. And I'll kind of hold off now, because I know we need to make room for questions.
Yeah, and so there's trying to get all of this into like a presentation sometimes is challenging. This is a place where teachers have a lot of different roles, like they said, and it does help you. As a teacher here, it helped me to see what happened behind the scenes, what in most schools is behind the scenes. And so when I tell my teachers, like, well, there's a budget issue here, I share that stuff with them. They know that we have different budgets that get spent different ways. Those are things I didn't know as a teacher till I came here. So that's been a challenge. Moving forward for us, what are we kind of like looking for? We've done this every year except for the last 2 summers now because of the pandemic. We have it's like a 2-night, 2.5 day or so summer retreat. We have that right after school gets out. In the past, we've usually gone to the desert, because when it's 120 out, you can get rooms for cheap. But this year we're going to go up to the mountains and just spend a couple days with each other. And it's not like we're not just sitting around the pool having drinks. We are really putting in a couple full days of work, where it starts with playing, though, to be honest. Like the first day we're playing games, we're kind of re-energizing. But then we go back and talk about like what went well this year, what didn't go well, what are we going to work on, how do we reestablish our norms, especially if we have our new team members already on board. Like if we had, like this year, we're gonna hopefully hire a new math teacher, a new science teacher. How do we make sure that they feel on board? And it doesn't mean assimilate; it means bring your assets to the table as well. But understanding where we all are. So spending some time and doing some work so that as we go into that teacher summer, which is obviously teacher summers are also not just sitting around the pool having drinks, but we go into that summer of planning and thinking that we are all on the same page. We also just, coming out of the pandemic, one of our big takeaways is we needed to change how we talk about the work and the learning. And so we also have moved into a standards-based grading system. Next year, our whole school is going to be doing this. And so we're piloting it in a few places this year. We're refining and working on how that's going to happen, school-wide. This conversation around standards-based grading took place over a couple of months. There was research and conversations, and we did not always agree. There were times where it sort of felt like there was some heat in the room, but because we had done so much work on building relationships and building trust and how to have conversations, we asked the difficult questions of each other. came out on the other side with a lot of agreements and that understanding that we were all on the same page trying to just make things work better for our students. So that's where we're at. That's where we're going. Even though, you know, we reopened in August, it still feels like we just came back to school. It's still like, I'm sure you all know, it still feels like we are still in the middle of a pandemic in LA, and especially this part of LA. It's been pretty rough. And so it's all of those things together. And so we're looking to how we can move forward and learn from the last 2 years. So that's where we're at. We're going to have some time for questions. And then also here's all of our contact info. That's actually our building there. Everything happens in that place. You can see our 3 floors. You can see us. We're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, and then all our emails are there. You could just add our name and at sjhumanitas.org. So J Austin or Vega or E Placencia at SJ Humanitas. I'm always happy to answer questions as they come up. If you're like the next day, you're like, oh, I should have asked them this. You send them on. We're happy to help. We're happy to answer. So from there, we'll just, if you have some questions, we're happy to take them on. And if you want to like throw them in the chat, or you want to unmute, however you want to do it, we're here to ask questions. I'll leave this up for like 30 more seconds, and then we'll close out the presentation or close out the slides.
All right, we have about 10 minutes for questions for the school team. Can you talk about the onboarding process?
Yeah, it's actually something we're really working on. It's been challenging for the last 2 years. Ideally, we're already, so in LA, I enter the budget process in the next couple of weeks for next year. And so I'm already anticipating not only you were like adding back a position that we couldn't fill last year, but the first part is hopefully getting new people to come to our retreat so they get a feeling for our culture. We try to have really like some this year we called them new-ish teacher meetings, because we had teachers who entered their classrooms here in August as a second-year teacher, having never taught in an actual classroom. So having meetings with them and talking about some of the technical things that they have to learn. I think also part of the unofficial onboarding is working with the grade level team. You really are kind of thrown right into the fire of planning, but you're given lots of resources. And I think the first thing you want to teach for us, teaching new teachers, is that you're going to make mistakes. And I'm almost like, with a new teacher, if they don't make mistakes, I'm like, why are you not making mistakes? Like, make some mistakes because you need to take bigger risks. But that those mistakes are they're fine. They're good. So I think that's a big part of it, is just some of the meetings. It's just, we're revamping all of that right now because our new teachers came to us and said, we just didn't get enough of that. So that's part of the process, is I have to say, yeah, we didn't do a great job and we're working on it.
If I can speak on this one for a little bit, part of the onboarding process, informal onboarding process, is, as Jeff mentioned, done through the GLT, the grade level team. So when we get a new member, we kind of take the initiative to be like, okay, so this is what you have to know about advisory. This is what you have to know about this. And it's really almost like the home base. We have a little group chat. It's so that that teacher feels comfortable going to, just a small subset of teachers to ask about, different things, lunch, logistical things, vision things, all different things. So there's various levels of support, but yes, it's something we're working on.
Yeah, it's challenging. Yeah, but I would also say too, this is a good place. I feel like this is a good place to start being a teacher, because there is the feeling of, we want to support you. And I know when I was a starting teacher in Los Angeles, I got the worst teaching assignment. And one of my goals and why I'm able to do it is because my teachers agree, is I try to make the first year teachers their day as easy as possible. And so I try not to have them moving between classrooms. When you have 25 teachers and you have 19 classrooms, there's no much choice besides sharing. But I try to limit their travel. I try to give extra time for support because it's whatever this tradition of like you get your assignment by seniority, it just doesn't work for me. Like you give the easiest assignment to the most veteran teacher. Like, so that's part of it too. Pilot school. Oh, our district is not expanding the pilot school model. It was controversial because there's a lot of feeling that one of the things about our electrical work agreement is it's teacher written. So our process is our teachers take the previous year's agreement. They make suggestions, or we have grade level meetings where they make suggestions for how to change it, things to add, things to delete. Then it goes to our governing council, which is students and family, parents and teachers, and they do an approval, and then the teachers have the right to reject it. But part of that process is every year, I, as the principal, have the right to tell a teacher, I'm not offering you a deal for next year. It's not as simple. It's not like I'm firing them forever. They go back into the district hiring pool. And it's not like I can't really do it at a whim. I wouldn't do it at a whim. We've only done that, I think, twice in our 11-year history. And so that's been controversial. There's been the perception that it's used to get rid of older teachers. So they're not expanding it. The pilot schools are largely in some of our most challenging and needy communities, ours specifically, but they're in they're in South LA, they're in Watts, they're in communities that have long been underserved. And so they're comparing their experience with like some of our more affluent communities. And in the past that they're like, oh, the data doesn't show that you're doing better. It's like, but we're doing above average with communities that we're just starting to get buy-in from that they don't trust this system. And so they're not expanding it, to be honest. But I think we're in a place where we're fighting to push back on that. And some of the things that we've done well, that we've used our autonomies for, the district has adopted school-wide. Like schools have more autonomy on how they spend their money now. They're getting more autonomy on curriculum. I think our new superintendent coming from Miami is kind of feeling the same. I think he's going to give more support to local control, which I think is important. Whoosh, change your hiring process. Our hiring process is, I don't know, man, it's arduous. When I interviewed to teach at LA, it was like a 20-minute interview. We're including students on interviews. There's definitely teachers who have been hired here that I wasn't even at the interview. And so it's a team that does it. I think that freaks some people out when you walk into your interview and there's like 11 people there. But I think that also prepares you for what it's like. When you come here, it's your doors open and we're all here to be part of the team. So they do have to go through the district as well. I think over time, what we've changed is just really making sure that we get them in front of students, because students have good radars for, no better term, BS. They have good BS radars, and they've made some good decisions for us in the past. But we do these huge panels, like Eugenia said. I don't know, what was your experience? Because you were sort of the most recent. I mean, I was original teacher here. Like, do you remember your hiring process? And
I do. It was really fast. It was virtual because I was at Hollyhock, the teaching fellowship. But mine was really small compared to some of the interviews I've been in, because I was being hired like 3 weeks before school started. But typically, yeah, as Jeff said, we meet in our collab room, and it's students, sometimes parents, and a bunch of teachers just asking questions about not just, are you an expert in your content, but how do you deal with student behavior? What's your definition of social justice? We give them scenarios, and we're really trying to, I guess, identify those soft skills. Do they have an equity framework, right? All of those things. That's a great question. Thank you.
Yeah, I think if you cry in the interview, you're in. That's been our experience. It happens. Yeah, I think the hardest part is getting through the district and all the paperwork. But I mean, honestly, I think, well, like Eugenia, you were a recommendation from somebody, right? I mean, most of it, and Eugenia is now half our staff, Eugenia found, like people that she knows from places. So that's an easy part too. So that's a big help when people are like, they like working here enough that they recommend to people that they know.
Have you found that, or I'm curious sort of if you have looked at your teacher retention compared to either other pilot schools or other schools in LA Unified, given the, strong community culture that you built?
I think about it all the time. I think not only about when teachers leave, but why. And so, I mean, in our history, yeah, we have had teachers who left because this was too much. Is it? I mean, but teaching is never easy. When you come here, I don't promise that you're going to go home and like you'll be home. Your spirit will be energized, but your body's going to be tired. But that happened to me before I was at a school like this. And I was tired from, having to have conversations with my students about the garbage that they were facing in another classroom, or, tired of having somebody like a principal or an assistant principal above me tell me what to do in my classroom, like how to teach. And teaching is not easy. And that's under the microscope right now. We are all seeing how challenging it is. So I'm not going to promise an easy time here. But I will promise that this is a place where you'll be valued. If you don't feel valued, most people will let you know that. And so I think when people leave, I also ask why. And so last year, we had one teacher who left and he said it was too much, but also left teaching. Another teacher literally just moved. She went and got married up in the north, and so she would have stayed. And that's where I think the nice thing is it's a small staff and I know why people go. I think number wise, it's hit and miss. But we're mostly, I would say, lower. Most schools, like when I was at the other school, a staff of 180 and you had 10 to 15% turnover a year. And we're probably about the same, but it's, one or two people, three people. Because, it's I feel like it's a good place to be, but it's not easy, but teaching isn't.
Yep. And you're right. I mean, it has to be a good fit for the teacher also, right?
Yeah. And that's the nice part about being here is with that electoral agreement, every year the teacher is empowered to say, this isn't the right place for me. I'm choosing somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And they just move back into the district pool and they have a chance to go find a better fit. And I think that's great. I think that's how it should be.
All right. Thank you for giving your time in a crazy school year, as it seems. Hopefully one of these years it'll be, well, we all have a new normal anyway, so I won't even say that.
There's no normal. Come on.
Yeah, we're in there. Thank you again for sharing your story. Always inspiring. And for those of you attendees in this session, head on back to your agenda and you can click to join our closing. We'll be hearing once again from Brett Madden and Robin, who is part of a research team that recently joined the university and Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College. So thank you, and we'll see you all soon.